Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 17th of October of 2025. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. In this video we're going to continue with the United States of America. Once again, today Zelensky came to the United States of America, to Washington, with the purpose to have a meeting with the President of the United States of America, Donald Trump. And according to Zelensky, Trump was planning to provide Ukraine and him missiles, Tomahawk missiles. But as we discussed in the previous video, then Donald Trump had a call with the president of Russia, Putin, and it seems that the Zelensky's plans were ruined completely. So before we start, I would like to point to attention that I started making this video before the meeting between Trump and Zelensky happens. And so most likely by the time you see this video, you're going to see this video, most likely you will have more details and more information about this meeting between Zelensky and Trump. Anyway, I believe that nothing special is going to happen during this meeting. Most likely Zelensky will not get his Tomahawk missiles. This is the very important and the most important thing. And most likely today we're gonna see the second part of the White House Oval Office show. I would like to remind you that the first part took place several months ago during the rare metals discussions. Today, I think that something similar we're gonna see in the Oval Office between Zelensky and Trump. I believe that this is going to be the next part of biggest humiliation ever in the modern politics. Anyway, currently, and probably this is not even the most important thing. The most important is the meeting that is going to take place within a week or 2 weeks on the territory of Hungary in Budapest. According to information we have, Trump invited Putin to visit Hungary with the purpose to discuss everything and probably to settle the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. The Russians made their own statements regarding the situation. For example, the Peskov, the press secretary of Putin, stated that a meeting between Putin and Trump could take place within 2 weeks or a little later. If the leaders of the two countries want to hold the meeting, Lavrov and Rubio will first begin working on its organization, the presidential press secretary added. You know that, of course, when talking just about words, it's very simple to say that Russia will go to Hungary. But the problem is how the Russians are going to get there, because there is one big country between Russia and Hungary, and this country has the name of Ukraine. So obviously the Russian Federation will not be able to enter Hungary through the territory of Ukraine, because Zelensky obviously will try to do everything he can with the purpose to bring down Russian plane. So that is why there are several options how the Russians can do this. They can get Hungary through the territory of Belarus, then Poland, and then through the territory of Slovakia and enter Hungary, or the Russians can get this state through the territory of Turkey, Bulgaria, Serbia, and so on. So both roads are very dangerous, and both roads go through the territory of NATO countries and through the territory of the European Union. Furthermore, there are several countries that are obliged to capture and to arrest Putin if Putin enters their, let's say, airspace, or their territories. So everything is very complicated, and of course the situation will be discussed, and obviously the United States of America will be forced to send their own fighters, F-35 or F-16s, with the purpose to support Putin, so not to allow anybody in the European countries to bring down Russian plane or something like this. Obviously, this is going to be a very interesting situation, and obviously this possible meeting on the territory of Hungary would be the biggest humiliation of the entire European Union, of Brussels, because Putin will be basically on their territory and they would not be able to do anything, because they're also obliged to capture and to arrest Putin. Today, the Hungarian authorities made lots of very interesting statements. The planned meeting between the US and Russian presidents is excellent news for peace-loving people around the world. We are ready. So the process has begun. We're going to see lots of preparations. And the thing is that most likely this is going to be a very interesting show, another show that we will face the next weeks. And obviously Zelensky will try to make some provocations. Maybe not. Anyway, we'll see. So now let's return back to Ukraine and let's discuss the situation on the ground. Because telling the truth, during the previous 24 hours, we got the biggest number of updates for a very long period of time. The Russians are advancing along the entire line of combat contact, as it was stated by Putin to President Trump. So now let's discuss everything in details, and there are lots of very interesting changes. So let's start. And first, we're going to talk about the Zaporozhye direction. During the previous 24 hours, the Russians managed to improve their positions significantly. So this is the map by the end of the 17th of October of 2025, and this is the map by the end of the 16th of October. So as you can see, there are two areas where the map has been changed. The first area is the territory of the village by the name of Privilia. Today, the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation reported that Russians, as a result of offensive operation and as a result of decisive actions, managed to establish complete control over the settlement. And as usually in the videos of this type, we can see lots of episodes how Russians were securing this territory, how Russians were bombing and attacking positions and units of the armed forces of Ukraine. And of course, in the final part of this video, we can see the moment when two Russian soldiers raised the Russian flag in the most central part of the settlement. So based on this video and based on the report of the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation, we have adjusted the map by coloring this territory under complete Russian control. So once again, this is the situation by the end of the 16th of October, and this is the situation by the end of the 17th. So now we see that the Russians managed to disrupt the Ukrainian logistic, and now the Russians most likely will start offensive operation in many directions, especially in the southeastern direction, with the purpose to attack the Uspienovka fortified area. And of course, the Russians will attack in the northern direction with the purpose to capture the village of Vishneva. But these two attacks are very important, but probably this is not the most important update of today because it's just speculations. The most important update is coming from the southern area, from the Poltavka fortified area. If you remember, yesterday we had two fortified areas. The first one is Uspienovka fortified area. We have colored this territory with additional yellow areas. You can see this is Uspienovka fortified territory. And yesterday we had the rest of the Poltavka fortified area. We have this yellow cloud above the settlement of Poltavka and the settlement of Okhotniche. And today, as you can see based on the map, we have removed the Poltavka fortified area because today the pro-Ukraine resources adjusted their maps, and according to their report, the Russians, as a result of offensive operation, managed to establish complete control over the settlement by the name of Poltavka. So we can say that the Poltavka fortified area probably stopped existing officially today. And this is very important piece of news. Now the Russians secured the village. We are waiting for confirmation from the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation. Most likely they will do this tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. The Poltavka, as we can see, was captured by Russians, and this village is located on the Ukrainian side of the river Yanchul. Basically, the Russians managed to answer in the operational space, and now from this village, the Russians have chances and possibilities to move in many directions. They can move further in the western direction with the purpose to attack the city of Galiai Pole, its northeastern part. The Russians from these positions can advance further in the northwestern direction to capture the village of Okhotniche and to answer this dense network of the fortifications. Anyway, all roads lead Russians behind the settlements and behind main defense lines. So obviously the next target for Russians is the city of Uspienovka. This is Uspienovka fortified area. We believe that the Russians will be able to capture this territory in coming days. Maybe it will take a week or two for Russians to secure the territory completely, and with the fall of the Uspienovka fortified area, the Russians will continue offensive operation further in the southwestern direction, and this is obviously with the purpose to attack the city of Gulai-Pole from behind, and this Russian progress on the ground can lead to complete collapse of the entire Zaporozhye direction, because if Ukrainians lose the city of Gulai-Pole, then they will lose the city of Orekhov. Probably not automatically, but it's going to be just a matter of time, but not a matter of whether the Russians are able to do this or not. The situation is very difficult, as we can see, and the Ukrainians are forced to fall back. Now let's move further and discuss the situation in the city of Pokrovsk and the Pokrovsk agglomeration. During the previous 24 hours, we received lots of very interesting updates, so let's discuss them in details. First, the Russians continue their offensive operation in the area of the settlement of Udachna and Kotlina. Now the Russians are tasked to take under complete control the Pokrovskaya mine. So in this video we can see how Russians were bombing and attacking the Pokrovskaya mine with artillery and with aviation. The Ukrainians tried to hold their positions on the territory of this facility because this is a very important strategical facility. If Ukrainians lose control over the territory, the Russians will also enter the operational space and will be able to move further in the direction of Sergeyevka and in the direction of the M30 road with the purpose to complete the encirclement of the entire Pokrovsk agglomeration. But saying the truth, I'm not even sure whether the Russians need this, because according to information we have today, the Russians managed to create completely a cauldron for the armored forces of Ukraine on the territory of the Pokrovsk agglomeration. So let's discuss this update in details, and first let's talk about the western part. This morning, the pro-Ukraine resources published this video where we can see how Ukrainians, how FPV drone operators of the armored forces of Ukraine were attacking positions of the armored forces of the Russian Federation in the western part of the city of Pokrovsk. Based on this video and based on reports of different mappers and military experts, we adjusted the map by adding additional territories under complete Russian control. So this is the situation by the end of the 16th of October of 2025, and this is the situation by the end of the 17th of October. Furthermore, this is not the only update we got during the previous 24 hours. The most important update is this one. Today, several pro-Russian resources reported that as a result of offensive operation, the Russians managed to break through completely the western flank of the city of Pokrovsk and the entire Pokrovsk agglomeration. And as a result of clashes, the Russians captured completely the industrial zone, and the Russians managed to get the Naberezhnaya Street, which is located in the northwestern part of the city. So summarizing everything, by the end of the 17th of October of 2025, the armored forces of the Russian Federation, the presence of the Russian forces was recorded in this, along this red line. So obviously this is already a complete collapse of Ukraine defense and the creation of the Pokrovsk cauldron. So why is that? Why I'm telling you this? First of all, the distance. Let's take a look at the distance. According to this pro-Russian resource update, the distance between edge position of the armored force of the Russian Federation in the western part, in the northwestern part of the city of Pokrovsk and the Olympiyska Street is already around 2 kilometers. As for FPV drones, this is already nothing. This is already nothing, and most likely Ukrainians are no longer able to use this area for evacuation, rotation, supply, and support. Furthermore, I would like to remind you that during the previous days, we got lots of reports that the Russians managed to cut the TO550 road between Rodinsk and Mirnograd physically. So as of now, we haven't adjusted the map. We are waiting for additional clarifications, but the thing is that we start receiving updates of the type. So, and as you can see, the distance between these possible Russian positions and the Olympiyska Street is around 2 kilometers as well. And furthermore, I would like to remind you that on the 10th of October of 2025, we got probably the most important video that we discussed several times. Here we can see a cemetery that was created on the intersection of the Olympiyska Street and the TO515 road. And here we can see dozens of Ukrainian vehicles and tanks that were destroyed as a result of Russian artillery strikes or FPV drone attacks. So which means that that's it. Ukrainians are no longer able to use this perimeter for evacuation, rotation, supply, and support. And this is already a cauldron. This is a cauldron of modern warfare of 2025, of the 21st century. So we believe that due to this situation, the resistance of the armored forces of Ukraine in coming days are going to reduce even more. And most likely the city of Pokrovsk will fall within months or something like this or so. Ukrainians may try to hold their positions in this area with paying significant price with manpower and Ukrainian soldiers, and they may try to hold positions on the territory of the city for another 6 months, but for these purposes they will gonna have to pay significant price. They will lose thousands of soldiers, or maybe even tens of thousands or something like this. But you know that Syrsky and Zelensky are ready for everything with the purpose to hold the front line. So everything is possible. Anyway, let's wait and see, but something tells me that not everything depends just on the wishes of Zelensky and Syrsky, because if Ukrainians, the soldiers on the ground who are currently located on the territory of the agglomeration, realize that they are about to be encircled completely Obviously, they will not wait for commands of Ukrainian, let's say, military authorities. They would begin retreating and abandoning their positions, and this is going to be a completely unpredictable process, and this can happen any day, anytime soon. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the city of Konstantinovka, where Russians also began offensive operation. We have already discussed the situation in this area. Just once again, I would like to remind you, today pro-Ukraine resources published several videos where we can see how Ukrainians were attacking Russians to the southeast of the city of Konstantinovka, and how Ukrainians were attacking Russians in the city limits of the city of Konstantinovka, which means that Russians have strong control over the southeastern part. And currently, we have no doubts that the Russians are already on the territory of the settlement, and currently the clashes are taking place for this part. So, as you can see, the Russians are about to finish the battle for the city of Pokrovsk, and now they understand that they can begin intensifying their activities in the city of Konstantinovka perimeter. Now let's move further. Let's discuss the situation in the Sivers direction. During the previous 24 hours, pro-Ukraine resources published this video where we can see how Ukrainians were attacking Russian soldiers in the fields. This episode of Apividron attack took place exactly at this point. So based on this video, we came to the conclusion that most likely the Russians are about to finish the battle for this pocket. Most likely Ukrainians were forced to fall back from this area due to high risks of being encircled by Russians, because as we remember, the Russians currently are advancing in the direction of Zvanovka along the railways, and the Russians are trying to advance along the railways in the direction of the settlement of Siversk. So obviously there are very high chances, at least were very high chances, that Ukrainians could be caught in cauldron by Russians. So that is why they escaped this cauldron, and now the Russians are advancing in the northern direction without facing any resistance from the Ukrainian units. As for the Liman direction, during the previous 24 hours, several updates we got from the city of Liman itself. In this video, we can see how Russians discovered positions of the armed force of Ukraine in the city limits of the city of Liman, and they attacked this territory with aviation bomb. As a result of this attack, at the temporary deployment point of the armed force of Ukraine was completely destroyed, as you can see according to this video. The temporary deployment point wasn't just destroyed, there was secondary detonation. Furthermore, let's talk about the Kupiansk direction. Probably this is the second area where we have the most important updates. As you can see, the map has been adjusted as well, and the map has been adjusted significantly from the southeast and from the northwest. So first, let's compare the map between the dates. This is the situation by the end of the 16th of October, and this is the situation by the end of the 17th of October. Today, the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation stated that Russian troops have captured the settlement of Tikha and settlement of Pichana in the Kharkiv region. So based on this report, we adjusted the settlement of Pichana under complete Russian control. Yet we haven't received anything that can confirm this progress on the ground, but maybe the Russians will publish some updates in coming hours or days. But we see that the Russians most likely haven't stopped with this. The Russians continued their offensive operation, and currently the clashes are already taking place on the territory of the settlement by the name of Kurilovka, which is located to the west of the settlement of Pishane. In these videos, we can see how Russians were bombing and attacking positions of the armed forces of Ukraine, their defense belts around the territory with FAPs, with artillery, so which means that the Russians are moving further. And we understand why, because now it's clear that Ukrainians are not going to hold their positions in the city of Kupiansk, in the city limits, for a very long period of time, because they don't have this possibility. The Ukrainians, for example, every single day face the same problem. This is the river of Askola, and this is the, let's say, river crossing. Another batch of Ukrainian soldiers were trying to escape this area using vehicle, but they haven't managed to do this because the Russians discovered them. Not discovered, the Russians are patrolling this area every day, every single hour. There are probably dozens of drones that were hidden by the Russians between brushes, being different positions. So every time they can launch or raise another drone and to attack another vehicle that is approaching this area. And here we can see the story. Ukrainians have no possibilities to support their contingent. It's just a matter of time when they will begin retreating. And now, due to Russian offensive to the east and Russian progress on the ground in the city Kupiansk itself, we believe that this is going to happen very soon. In this video, we can see this video was published by Ukrainian side, how Ukrainians were attacking Russians with FPV drones in the northwestern and the western part of the city of Kupiansk. This episode of attack took place exactly among these buildings. Based on this video, we came to the conclusion that the Russians managed to improve their position significantly. So as you can see, everything that was posted before, according to Russian control over the western and the northwestern parts of the city of Kupiansk, are coming to be true. So Russians are moving, the news is tightening, and it seems that the city of Kupiansk also will fall in Russia's hands in coming days, maybe weeks. Now let's talk about the city of Volchansk. The city of Volchansk is getting more and more, let's say, popular these days because we are receiving more and more updates about this territory. The first group of Russian forces is finishing the battle for the southwestern part. Today the Russians struck the southern Volchansk citadel with FAPs and missiles. As you can see, very heavy damage the Russians managed to deal. This is the last stronghold of the armed forces of Ukraine in this part of the city, but it seems that Ukrainians would be forced to fall back from this area in coming days. Furthermore, today the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation reported that the settlement of Tikha was captured by Russians completely, and this is the last settlement on the Russian side of the river of Volcha. The village was secured, and it seems that the Russians are planning to cross the river of Volcha in this part as well, with the purpose to begin fightings for the Volchansky Hutory. And from these positions, the Russians will advance in the direction of the eastern and the southern parts of the city of Volchansk itself. So we see that the Russian offensive operation in this area is gaining momentum. The only thing I would like to remind you that several days ago, the Ukrainians announced the evacuation of the Verliki Burluk direction. So Ukrainians are planning to bring and introduce additional reinforcements and reserves. So we believe that in the northeastern part of the Kharkiv Oblast, we're going to see the same thing that we currently can see or we saw in the Zaporozhye direction. The Russians will try to cut this pocket between the Pechenegi water reservoir and the city of Kupiansk itself. Furthermore, the Russians, according to information we have, discovered something like field industrial zone where Ukrainians were producing drones. And here we can see how Ukrainians brought some trucks with parts. And the Russians, when discovered this position, they attacked this territory with Iskander missiles. And this temporary deployment point was immediately destroyed. So the situation is difficult. As for me, I'm waiting for the meeting between Trump and Zelensky. I believe that this is going to be one of the best meetings in 2025. I'm talking not about results, I'm talking about show we are going to see. I believe that, once again, by the time you see this video, you're going to have additional information. So let's wait and see what is going to be next, but obviously the next days are going to be decisive. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for your watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye-bye.